This is your host, Tom Wilmer, reporting from New Brunswick. Please join me as we speak with Daryl Michaud, a longtime born and bred New Brunswicker. Hi.
Hi, Tom.
Great to be here. It's such a joy to come to New Brunswick. There's such an abundance of incredible things to see and do, and I'd love it if you would share with us some of the highlights of New Brunswick.
You've seen a lot of them, Tom. We've traveled the Fundy coast. We've seen the tides of Fundy, 42 feet in difference in some places. Now we're sitting here in the middle of the dock in Shediac at Pointe du Chien Wharf, and we're looking at lobster boats, and it's Sunday afternoon, and people are using them for barbecues and pleasure boats basically today. Got a lot to do with the attitude of the folks around here. Enjoy what's here and soak up the sun and the scenery.
You mentioned the Bay of Fundy. That is probably one of the most incredible sights and scenes I've witnessed in my life. From what I understand, it's the greatest tidal fluctuation on planet Earth.
It is. The tides sometimes reach up to 50 feet, 52 feet. I think it's probably the highest recorded. And the bay is just the right shape so that the Atlantic Ocean flows in twice a day and flows out twice a day, and it's equal to the water flow of all the rivers on Earth, flushing in and out every day.
My name is Jason Lloyd. The Hopewell Rocks are a provincial park located here in Hopewell, Cape, New Brunswick. A unique experience for our visitors to come witness the highest tides in the world here on the Bay of Fundy. 6 hours and 15 minutes is the total time it takes for the tide to go from low right up to its highest point. We have many different rock formations here on the beach for our visitors to come and discover and to see. One in particular that we can see from where we are standing now is Lover's Ark, the most photographed natural site in Canada. People can come, walk, 3 to 5 hours later can actually kayak on the same place that we're actually walking, which is now would be covered by 46 feet of water.
"50 feet in tide between low tide and high tide is like a 4.5, 5-story building. It's an amazing thing. It's carved out some rocks out of the cliffs, and you've got sea stacks with trees growing on top of them. You can kayak in among them through the archways at high tide, and low tide you can walk on the ocean floor and just walk through the archways. Tidal currents create situations that stir up a lot of nutrients so that it's a perfect feeding ground in the summertime for whales, right whales, minke whales, humpbacks, finbacks, and they're all out there, and of course lots of people are ready to take you out to have a look at the whales.
I read somewhere that you have the greatest diversity of whale species of anywhere in at least the Atlantic.
Yeah, there's certainly other places to look for whales. You see probably more species here than anywhere else. More whales, more of the time is what we say.
Share with us Mary's Point, the birds that we saw there the other day. That was incredible.
Yeah, those birds are incredible, aren't they? We saw about 50,000 of them sitting on the beach waiting for the tide to go out, because when the tide goes way out then it exposes the mud flats, and Mary's Point is a good place to see them.
My name's David Christie. I'm a naturalist who lives here at Mary's Point on the upper Bay of Fundy. We're right on the beach at the moment at high tide to watch the thousands of shorebirds that congregate here during their southward migration. We have 4 kinds of sandpipers, a couple of kinds of plovers that are here this morning, probably 50,000 birds, perhaps a bit more. The upper Bay of Fundy has large mudflats that are exposed at low tide. Those abound with many small invertebrates, a type of shrimp, and various worms, which form a very attractive food for shorebirds. The birds have nested in the tundra of northern Canada, and they're on their way to wintering grounds in South America. And they stop here. Individuals spend probably 10 days to 2 weeks feeding on the little animals that live in the mudflats and resting on the beach when the tide comes in. And during this time, what they're doing is building up a layer of fat that will enable them to fly non-stop to South America. That takes them roughly about 3 days, flying out over the ocean from the Maritimes and passing east of all of the North American land and the West Indies in order to reach South America in the area between Venezuela and the Guianas. Today on the beach the birds are very quiet. It's a foggy morning, but we have had a peregrine falcon, which is their main enemy. It has come in order to try to catch one for its meal.
Very good, thank you very much. Talk to us a little bit about some of the villages and the towns along the Fundy coast. They are just so enchanting and world class. They're like right out of a painting.
Well, starting down at the west end, you've got the Saints, St. Stephen, St. Andrews, St. George, St. Martin, St. John. We spent some time in St. Andrews. It's a beautiful resort town, really, St. Andrews by the sea. You can do whale watching from there. You can stay at the beautiful Fairmont Algonquin Hotel, which is a definite resort hotel. You saw the atmosphere. It's relaxed. It's not a city hotel where everybody's busy working and dressing up with ties.
We are here with Mark Paul, the Director of Sales and Marketing at the Algonquin Hotel.
Fairmont Algonquin goes back to 1889 when it was actually kind of an international effort, I suppose. 11 Americans and 3 Canadians decided that St. Andrews would be the premier resort destination on the east coast. Of these 11 Americans and 3 Canadians developed the St. Andrews Land Company. They purchased 80 town lots, and at the edge of the town limit they purchased another 500 acres of land. The 80 town lots obviously became the home of the resort, and the 500 acres became what is now our famous golf course.
The folks there are sitting back on the veranda, having a drink, just enjoying playing croquet, swimming in the pool, whatever. All sorts of beds and breakfasts, little restaurants, excellent shopping downtown. Then you move on to St. George, the granite town, covered bridge nearby, beautiful waterfall through a gorge, an old red mill, on to St. John. It's a larger city. It's about 80,000, 90,000 people, maybe 100 if you start counting the area around. It's the oldest incorporated city in Canada. It's where the refugees came. Now get this, these are the refugees from the American War. These were people who were still loyal to King George III, and they had to have someplace to go because it was pretty hot for them in the Boston States. So they had to get out, and they came up here, and they founded the city of St. John. So it's a very historic city. It's a beautiful old city too. It's a seaport. Then on from St. John, St. Martin's, a beach about a mile long and fairly wide where they used to build ships. They built hundreds of ships there with the lumber that they floated down the rivers. The lumber is nearby. You saw the trees up in the back, just behind the town. Beyond that, up into Moncton, which is sort of the Acadian capital, although some Acadians would debate that, but it's probably the Acadian capital of New Brunswick.
Acadian.
Okay, Acadians are basically French-speaking Canadians who live in the Maritime provinces, predominantly in New Brunswick. About a third of the population of New Brunswick speaks French. They also speak English, generally, but a third speaks French, and they call themselves Acadian, and they've been here since the 1600s. During the 1750s, there was a deportation. When the British took over, they deported a lot of the Acadians. Many of them went to Louisiana and became Cajuns, in fact. So that's where Cajun comes from. These folks are still here. We're here in Shediac, in fact, in the middle of almost of Acadia. You'll hear a lot of people speaking French around you. You eat Acadian food, which is fairly specific. We saw some of that yesterday.
Sylvain Godin. I'm the chief historian here at Acadian Historical Village in Caraquette, New Brunswick.
To start with, a little bit about the history of the Acadians.
The Acadians, they come from France, for instance, in 1604, down in Nova Scotia, our neighbor's province. They lived there prosperously until 1713, where the English took over the province of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and became loyalists, come under the British crown. And then we were living on their land as Frenchmen until 1755. Between 1713 and 1755, they were asking us to the oath of allegiance, loyal to the king, and if ever the French come in, and they ask us to take arms to defend the English crown. And we always refused the part of taking arms against our ally, French, but we also said we would stay neutral. So they long call us, and in 1755 they say, oh, that's enough for the Acadian here, we have to move them. So they deport us to the 13 colonies on the east side of states. Louisiana was a French colony. So the Acadian, when they got expulsed from this part here of the Canada to the colonies, they just went normally to Louisiana. That's why they were favoring that, the arrival of the Acadian in Louisiana.
Back to Acadia in New Brunswick. Tell us, they were expelled in 1755, but then started coming back somehow?
Yeah, they did so. After the Treaty of Paris in 1763, they let us come back.
So today we are at a very special spot on planet Earth.
It's very special to me anyway, that's for sure. It's the Acadian historical village, le village historique acadien in Caraquet. We're owned by the province of New Brunswick, but what we want to show here is the culture of the Acadian, where we come from, because we have houses here. We have over 30 houses, historical houses, dating from 1770 to 1937. And we show all the different aspects as authentic as possible, the way of living, in costume, in our meals, in our walk, in our talk, in our way that we received you. It's all our Acadian way of doing so.
Do you have any recommended websites?
Yes, for the website, www.villageacadien. It's Village Historique Acadien.com. Or if you do a search on Acadian Village, you'll find our website.
Sylvain Godin, the historian at the historic site in Acadia, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Me too.
They have a celebration here in the 15th of August, in fact. They call it Tantamar, where they simply go out and beat drums and celebrate being Acadian. You can imagine that. There's an historical village. It's based on probably about 1840, 1850. People farm it. They actually work the village. They celebrate the deportation. They bemoan it. It wasn't a happy thing. I don't know if anybody has read Evangeline by Longfellow, but that's basically the story of the deportation, how two lovers were in fact separated during the deportation, because families were separated. It was a pretty terrible thing, actually. They were scattered all up and down the eastern seaboard of the United States. Some of them were back in Europe. Some of them were fortunate enough to escape into the woods. Their villages were being burned, don't forget. They escaped into the woods, and many of them came back out after, and they didn't really settle where they'd been before, but they founded new villages, and that's present-day Acadie.
What are some of the other exceptional things to see and do in the province of New Brunswick that you would recommend?
There's really good dining here. If you're looking for fine dining, there's none better than you'll find in Moncton and St. John. You had one of the meals at the Algonquin, and you know how good it was. Salmon marinated in molasses. It sounds kind of strange, but boy, it's good. Seafood is a really big thing here. We're going to have some lobster this afternoon. We've already had lots of lobster. You can never get enough.
We have faster growing lobster than elsewhere. This one here is 7 or 8 years old in the Northumberland Strait. He would be over 10 years old along the Atlantic coast. They don't grow as fast. Le homard ici, là, le long de la côte atlantique, il serait au-dessus de 10 ans. Il grandit pas si vite.
As I said, the salmon, different types of seafoods. That's what a lot of people come for here. If you're interested in the history, there are historical sites where battles took place. The fort we visited the other day, where the British fought the French, and then eventually Americans, in fact, invaded at one point a small force to try and bring this area into the Revolution. The natural wonders, let's say, we saw the rocks carved out of the cliffs. We saw a river that flows backward. As the tide comes in, it pushes this 450-mile river, all flowing out through a gorge into the sea. When the tide is out, then when the tide comes in, the river flows backward for several miles upstream. Very strange.
You have a reversing waterfall?
That's what we call it. Yeah, well, falls is a rapid, okay. So the rapids reverse from the old French word saut, which is a jump. That's where the water jumps, basically.
Daryl, unfortunately, we're almost out of time, but before we go, please share with the listener the ideal time or times of year to come and visit New Brunswick.
Okay, if you're a young family, I think probably July and August is the best time to be here. It's when the beaches are at their best and the water is very warm. Warmest water north of Virginia. If you're on the East Coast, Fundy's cold, but the East Coast is warm. If you're a senior and you're not worried about the kids being in school, June and September are very, very good shoulder seasons, even late May into October, because then you get into the fall foliage, which is absolutely beautiful. And if you're interested in doing some snowmobiling, a little downhill skiing, more cross-country, then come in February. It's cold, but it's very hospitable. It's warm inside.
Very good. Daryl Michaud with Tourism New Brunswick, Canada, thank you so very, very much for sharing with us.
Great. Nice to be here, Tom. Glad you came.
I'm glad to. I'm your host, Tom Wilmer reporting for the award-winning Audiolog, the travel show, airing over these NPR affiliates for the past 21 years. If you'd like to listen to this show on the web as an MP3 podcast or more than 100 other archived travel shows, log on to www.kcbx.org. At the homepage, click on Program Archives, and then click on Audiolog, the travel show.